Hello and welcome to this week's episode of GasCast. I'm your host Max Alderson, joined as always by Tom Metcalf. Hi Tom.
Hey up.
And we're delighted to be joined once again by James Piercy from the Bristol Post. Hi James.
Evening lads.
Good to have you back.
Thanks very much for having me.
No problem at all. Are we all well?
We're all very well.
That's good. Well, 2 wins will do that. 2 wins on the bounce. Let's start with some news then, because last week some big news coming out of Rovers that Steve Hamer had been relieved of all duties at Bristol Rovers Football Club and effectively has parted company with the club. It was a very short 14-word statement, to be precise. Metz, do you want to start us off and sort of give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's been in the offing for a while, hasn't it? He's kind of been reduced hours at the club. There's rumours, and I'm sure James will fill us in with this one, of kind of a rift between him and Weil specifically, and then kind of Hanny being the one that's kind of keeping him there. But there's also rumours that he's been leaking to the press or leaking via Ken Masters, so it's not good really. Everything around him seems to be quite negative before he left, and obviously these are all unsubstantiated rumours, and I'm just repeating what I've heard. But yeah, it doesn't look like he was a good presence at Bristol Rovers, so it's a good thing that he's gone, frankly. Yeah,
and lots of talk on the Rovers forums as well for a long time that Hamer has been the one who's been leaking a lot of the stuff that certain insiders on Rovers forums have been posting, and maybe Ken Masters as well. So it's all a bit conspiracy theory.
It is a bit, yeah.
But, no smoke without fire, and as we've seen, Steve Hamer's now left the club, so there was obviously some kind of dispute there, which has led to that. James, what's your sort of take of it from a press point of view?
Firstly, I was deeply moved by the statement. I thought that really encapsulated the sort of his service to the club and what he meant to Bristol Rovers. No, sorry. But it said everything, really, didn't it? Yeah. I mean, it's without saying anything, it said everything. Like you said, I mean, I think it's been a problem, I guess. That's not to say Steve Hamer is a problem, but I think his situation has been a problem at the club. Ever since I've been covering Bristol sport and Rovers and what now since I started in February, March, it was apparent there was a huge split at the club. There was 2 sides to the club, and those 2 sides never really spoke. There was some mediation, like you say, from Hani Al-Kadi. But ultimately, you can't run a football club if you've got 2 groups on 2 completely different pages. And what's more, what had sort of started as, like you'd say, a difference in opinion maybe, then became personal. And then ultimately, I just think both parties, and Weil obviously is part of that, but it wasn't just Weil, it was Martin Starnes, there was others involved as well, that simply they just stopped liking each other as human beings, and there was some nastiness in there. There's obviously some things that unfortunately I can't really say on the air and can't put in print because quite simply it's legally dodgy, and also it's very unpleasant. And I think for the betterment of Bristol Rovers, ultimately it's good that Steve Hamer's gone because of the impact. I mean, it had to go one way or the other. It was either Steve Hamer was going to stay at Bristol Rovers and everyone else was going to go, or he was going to go and everyone else was going to stay. And it's ultimately a political play. And I think from Weil's point of view, he will be, and others, they will be delighted this has happened, and it will feel more of a united club. Because ultimately, there has to be. It may seem from the outside, bickering and all this kind of stuff. It was a lot worse than that, but. There has to be culture matters, I think, in sports clubs, in football clubs, and that comes from the top. And if you're trying to run a football team, whether you're Graham Coughlin, whether one of the youth team coaches, whatever, and you're looking to the people who are running the football club, and they're arguing, they're not getting on, they're not talking, they're whispering behind each other's backs, that sort of stuff filters down. It's just not good vibes, not a good environment. And, there's kind of no coincidence in the fact, yes, there are other aspects to it in terms of financial and all this kind of thing. But there's there's a reason why Bristol Rovers have kind of, I don't want to upset anyone, but stagnated in a structural sense because basically they haven't been able to move forward because they've, all this kind of sort of politicking has been going on in the background. So I think for the benefit of Bristol Rovers, it's a positive move.
Yeah, and I think it can't really be seen as anything else. I mean, there was obviously a dispute, like you say, and I think there may be a cloud lifted now that the whole club can move on as a united front and move towards their aims, whatever those aims may be. So what does this mean for the structure at the club, Tom?
So we haven't got this overlapping role of a chairman and a CEO anymore. So it's very much more in the hands of what I'd deem more professional people rather than more kind of diehard gas heads, because I kind of felt like Hamer had the ear of, or I should say Ken Masters had the ear of Hamer a bit more, so that's kind of a bit more leverage for those people who traditionally supported Rovers down the years. And, those people obviously deserve credit, but we're in the 21st century now and we need to kind of push on, which kind of feeds into the pushback that people like Tom Gorringe have had from Rovers fans or certain sections of Rovers fans where they're like, well, he's not a gas head, this and that. But actually, the club needs to be run as a business. And it's horrible to say that, but it is what it is. So, yeah, I think it just removes that doubt of who's in charge. It's Starnes. Starnes is CEO. He's in charge.
And it's interesting you actually say that because inadvertently, I don't know, but kind of Steve Hamer's strength, if you like, and part of the reason why he was involved was his kind of old school football connections, and he was kind of known around the EFL, knew lots of other chairman, CEOs, was, in fact, on match days, he was often the kind of the contact, Rovers' contact with the visiting board, whoever that may be, directors, chairman, owners, whatever. And that was kind of seen as his strength. But so it's interesting you say about the kind of the modern, and so that kind of old school vibe is almost kind of, that's what he was there for. Martin Starnes has got that, but he's also very much, terrible pun, on the money in terms of the accounting. Sorry about that. I couldn't help but to say it. So yeah, no, it was interesting.
Cool. So what do we think this means for consortiums looking to take over the club then with Hamer gone? Was he sort of, obviously there's things we can and can't say, but was he very much involved in the talks and has now been removed from those talks, or is he not sort of integral in Rovers' plans?
Well, I think one of the suspicions was that he was believing he was part of a succession plan post Dwayne Sports, and he was manoeuvring himself into a position where he could be part of that succession plan beyond, I guess you would say, his employers. So effectively, it's a conflict of interest, and so that's he was in a position now. I don't think his influence extended to the point where, because he's now left the club, that negotiation, that deal, that offer is off the table. Absolutely not. No, it doesn't affect that in any way. It potentially prevents the potential buyers from having kind of intel, if you like, into Rovers beyond their meetings, face-to-face meetings. But in terms of the actual prospective takeover from that corner, in terms of the fruit market side of things, it's all very much, I say on track. That's not to say it's not on track, but it's kind of negotiations are ongoing. Offers have been made. I mean, if you want me to spell it out, there's obviously an offer with Total Produce, as has been the case for the last couple of months. I think a meeting was held about 2 or 3 weeks ago. There's an offer on the table. They're still waiting for a response. They're still hopeful that offer will be accepted, and I don't think Steve Hamer leaving Bristol Rovers will affect that offer in any way, shape or form. Yeah,
well, it's good to hear that, because I think a lot of Rovers fans had this concern that there's been no news for, really since the Blackpool game at all, about the developments of the fruit market site. And no news is good news, as they say, but I guess maybe not with negotiations, because you assume when there's silence that there's a breakdown in talks maybe, and with Hamer leaving as well, I think a lot of Rovers fans are seeing that maybe as, it's not going to plan, they're clearing house.
If there was a breakdown in talks, you would be reading about it. So it's still there.
Yeah,
let's say that.
Okay. So no news is good news as far
as
Rovers
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. Great, cool. Well, let's move on then, shall we, to on-the-field matters. Bromley and Shrewsbury, 2 wins on the road, but performances that were very much chalk and cheese, Mets.
Yeah, the Bromley game, which I went to, and I wrote a blog about it. Actually.
You went all the way to Bromley, didn't you, on a Tuesday
night? Yeah, I made a conscious decision to go to there and not Shrewsbury.
Do you know it was? Do you know it was on telly?
I did. I was aware, and what a mistake that was. Yeah, it was rubbish. And then the Shrewsbury game, the Shrewsbury performance was absolutely amazing. The differences being our midfield actually linked up with our attackers for a change. We didn't have that ultra defensive midfield. Sercombe and Ollie pushed up to support Adebayo instead of just kind of sitting back and protecting the defence, as we have done a lot this season. And against Shrewsbury, we did pressure them up the pitch and won the ball at the pitch, which as a fan is always nice to see. You always want to see a team on the front foot, but it also got results as well. Whereas Bromley, too many times we got the ball and we hoofed it, and Johnson was coming back from injury, so he wasn't amazingly effective. Nichols, less said about that the better. But even when Adebayo came on, he was struggling against their defence. So it's very much 2 completely different performances, almost 2 unrecognisable teams, really. Although a lot of the personnel was the same, the system was so different that it was, like you said, chalk and cheese, really.
So why don't we talk about that then, the change in system. 2 different formations. Obviously against Bromley we played our tried and tested 5-3-2. And like you said, the strikers were so isolated and we couldn't get the ball at the pitch. A change in plan on Saturday against Shrewsbury. It was a very new formation which we've not seen before. It was either a 5-4-1 or a 3-4-3 or a 5-2-3, however you want to look at it. Basically, you've got the 3 centre-backs, Upson and Agogo at holding midfield, then the wing-backs either side of them, then 2 attacking midfielders, which were Ollie Clarke and Sercombe, and then the striker in Adebayo. So it's like a square, 4 centre-mids in a square, with wing-backs, a back 3 and 1 striker.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Y Scout. It's a scouting platform.
Yeah.
They had it as a 3-4-2-1.
3-4-2-1.
Yeah.
I think that's fair, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right, actually, yeah.
3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1.
Because Sercombe and Clarke, sorry.
Yeah.
Because just to add to the mix, Sercombe and Clarke just off Adebayo, that was their kind of analysis of it. So
if anyone can sort of follow along with that, fair play to you.
But that's, it's something we moaned about at the start of the season, of Graham maybe being technically naive, but he's throwing out all these formations now. it's absolutely amazing. And like we always say, we forget that he's a young manager coming into it, relatively, inexperienced, and actually he really is starting to, I feel like, get the hang of it a bit, and is starting to adapt to who we're playing. I'm going to chalk Bromley off because it was dog shit, but Shrewsbury, he got it spot on, especially that first half. We absolutely dominated them. We should have been out of sight.
So it's got sort of the best of both worlds in sacrificing that second striker. What we've effectively done is we've kept the solidarity of the back 5 or the back 3, still got the width of the wing backs. You've kept the solidarity of the 2 holding midfielders protecting that back line.
I'm not sure solidarity is the right word there, Max.
Well,
I'm looking at James. As a professional writer, I'm looking at James.
Well, the interesting thing, because obviously at the start of the season when he was playing the Diamond, that was effective. There was other reasons to it, but it was about getting those 4 midfielders into the team, because it's like when you've got in your head, if you've got Agogo, Upson, Sercombe, Clarke all playing at their maximum ability, it's a very good midfield. The trouble is, they're all similar-ish, Agogo accepted, but there's similarities there to the extent where it's like, well, maybe you can only go with 3 of them. With this, you're again, like you say, you're getting the width of the wing-backs, the strength of the centre-backs, one kind of striker is able to hold the line, and you're getting the 4 midfielders in there as well. So you're getting all that personnel as well. So you're getting as many of your best players in theory on the pitch,
and you're getting the best out of Ollie Clarke, which is going forward.
Yeah,
I feel that's where he's best,
and Sercombe as well,
and Sercombe obviously
not fouling,
and also
not
having
fouling,
those 2,
not getting stupid yellow cards, which I think he did actually against Shrewsbury. He did get a yellow card, so he's off. He's at for the next league game, which is Southend at home.
Southend at home, which they've only got 5 points. So potential banana skin there,
obviously.
Knowing Rovers.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It does get the best out of those players, and I'm keen to see more of that shape, particularly with Jono leading the line there as the lone striker. Could potentially be something to watch out for.
Because Clarke playing off Clarke Harris is nice, and obviously Sercombe, because Sercombe's much more of a supplier than Clarke is.
Yeah.
Clarke's a funny midfielder in a way, isn't he?
I haven't been able to put my finger on what kind of midfielder he is.
He's almost like, right, you kind of at first sort of glance you think, well, he's kind of like a Steven Gerrard-ish type up and downer. No, I'm just talking about
Max is raging
but just on this kind of like, you'd think, well, is he a bit of an all-rounder? So he's up and down,
he is an
influential, drives the team forward. When he's moving forward, the team's going all this. But then when you actually think his defensive game probably isn't that great, not as good as maybe he would like it, and at occasion he can be a bit head down, route to goal, doesn't always see everything around him. So maybe he's better in almost like a free role. And then you think of Sercombe. Well, Sercombe's kind of that free number 10, but maybe Sercombe's better in a more structured, and then looking, because his ability, his passing ability, all this. So yeah, I think Clarke almost as a second striker.
Yeah,
maybe that's his best position.
He's a great striker of the ball, as we've seen over the years, and maybe playing shadow striker, if you like. I think it's the role like false nine behind a big man. Could potentially work. Keen to see more of it. So,
because he scores goals.
He does. Yeah,
I know
all
he
kinds
pings.
of goals.
I know he pings them, but he can score goals, and he's good at driving into the penalty area. But he's not just a Gerrard; he's a Lampard as well, and his ability to get.
God, blimey, you're playing out all the best. He's Gerrard and Lampard in one player.
Anyone else?
I'm surprised we haven't sold him for $5 million plus, if that's the case. Let's talk about the penalty, or supposed not penalty. Well, it wasn't a penalty given by the referee. We've looked back at the footage of the incident in which the Shrewsbury player bombs past Kilgore into the box, and Kilgore gets his arm across him. Ref says no pen. Chaos ensues, in which all the Shrewsbury players are complaining to the referee that it was a Stonewall pen. 3 Shrewsbury players get booked. There's a bit of handbags. A couple of Rovers players get booked. Ref says no pen, and then we go up the other end and score. But I think it was a pen. What do you think, Matt?
Is this the VAR studio?
Yeah, we're the VAR studio right now. I'm saying no pen. I think Kilgore gets absolutely burnt for pace, and fine. But then he kind of gets almost level with him, gets his arm across, gets his kind of hand around this player and barely touches him, and then he fucks down. And I'm just like, are you serious? That's he's
it's
barely
a homer.
been touched.
I think if they get it, it's because it's like a homer decision, isn't it? They've got that because they're at home, and because they haven't got it. Had they been playing away, and this daft hypothetical conversation, but I'm having, but if they have that, if they get that away, they're almost like, yeah, fair play. We've tried to play it, and we haven't quite got it because we're playing away from home. At home, maybe they're expecting to get it.
Yeah.
I think if Kilgore's got his hand on him, fair enough, but he hasn't really touched him. If he's pulled him and it's obvious, it's a penalty. If he's clattered into the back of him, which is what Ricketts was claiming, is that he's slowed down to shoot, and Kilgore's gone through the back of him, because it happens if you're chasing someone and they slow down. The laws of physics on your side as the defender there, but he hasn't. He's just kind of put his arm on him to go and pull him back, and he hasn't. He's just kind of got the hand on him, and this player's felt that and thought, right, that's enough. I'm getting a pen here. And for me, it's not a pen, but obviously,
I mean, if that's given, what's your?
I would have no complaints if that was given.
Really?
Yeah,
I'd smash in the gaff up.
I mean, the players beat you for pace. He's gotten into the box. What you then don't do, from my point of view, I mean, I'm not a centre back. I'm not anywhere near Alfie Kilgore's level. I've not got that level of knowledge or expertise on what to do in that scenario. But for me, you don't wrap your arm around someone who's running into the box when you're behind them. That's just asking for them to go down. Did it really slow him down enough to make an impact?
I guess there's an experience there, because if he does that again, there's every chance he could concede a penalty.
Yeah,
so.
and for me, he's not got enough of an advantage putting his arm round to slow him down.
Oh, it's an instinctive thing, isn't it? Because he knows he's been done.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I stick my leg in, I know it's a foul. If I put my arm, I'll give him something to think about.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe it's just one of those.
I think he's done excellently well.
And then he goes up the other end and scores a perfectly good goal to make it 3-0, as far as I'm concerned. And the ref chalks it out for offside when it was straight in. Is the linesman claiming that it went out before it came back in?
Lino's claiming that there's offside because there was a player of ours pretty much on the goal line with theirs, and that's what the line is flagged for. But if there's their players on the line, you can't be offside. So I don't know how he's given it. It's a shocking decision. And the ref actually was getting pelters all game for being a shite ref. So I'm not.
It's interesting. Shocked. It kind of shows in a way like referees how much they can influence a game. I'm not talking about specific decisions, but obviously it was a completely bonkers game of football in terms of the way the goals were scored, when they were scored, how they were scored, who was, you'd never have thought Rovers would go 2-0, 3-1 up there. But was that a byproduct of kind of the referee's control or lack of control? And, when mad decisions happen, does that contribute? Or is that just part of the beautiful part of a mental game of football? You need to have a couple of iffy decisions in there just to like increase the chaos. And
it's a very good point, because at that point you could accuse the ref of killing the game or not letting the game flow. It definitely was a bonkers game of football, and I think the ref did contribute to that, but I don't think that was to the detriment of the game.
No. In terms of entertainment, it's part of it, because, and without getting into the VAR thing, that takes away from that.
That's exactly where I was going to go.
The great inconsistencies of football.
Yeah, because you want a bit of injustice. It gets the crowd up. It gets everyone going.
Gets the players.
Oh, I love it. And that game was probably the biggest advert for ditching VAR that I can think of.
Let's move on to talk about a couple of players in those last two games. The one I want to sort of start with is Roland Menezes, who's come into the side in the absence of Tom Davies. And I think he's looked very, very solid. I talked about it with Nino on the Q&A pod last week. We both said how impressed we were with him. Nino actually said he thinks that Roland could be better than Kilgore, which is a massive shout. Based on 2 games of football, well, 1 game at the time, but definitely showing a lot of promise, and good to have another young lad coming through. Metz, what do you think about how he's done?
Yeah, he's been fantastic. Got man of the match against Bromley, and I think more than deserved. Nothing got past him, and then getting the ball down and playing it, he was fantastic. He's a little bit smaller than Kilgore, but definitely wins his more than his fair share of headers. And I think we've got a real player on our hands, and I think he can go definitely into the first. Well, I mean, he is in the first team. I think Davis is going to have a difficulty to get back in ahead of him. But yeah, I think he can go higher than he is now, definitely.
I think it's one of those it's a very strange thing, because in the summer I know we were definitely in for another centre-back. There was the Liam Scales sort of transfer saga where it didn't quite come off. He didn't come to us, but we were definitely in the market for at least one more centre-back than maybe Coughlin wanted, so we're maybe one short as far as Coughlin's concerned. So do we think that Roland wasn't in Coughlin's plans and he's almost forced his way through
Potentially, I mean, he's one that's obviously Graham's centre-back. He knows his centre-backs, doesn't he? He's always been aware of him, and he's kind of held him back, and he's often been questioned about him. But the Davis's injury, FA Cups, and he's played, what do we call it, leasing.com trophy?
Yeah,
we call it leasing.com, yeah. So he's kind of just worked his way, and actually Graham's done well by him, in fairness, because as you can see, he's kind of put him in at the right time, and there almost wasn't that much obviously that expectation is now going to increase with each performance, but he's put him in at the right time. Of course, things have happened, as always the case. You're not going to get your place in the team unless injuries happen, senior players come out in some way. What is great, as well as Kilgore, is that he's kind of another passer, he's another ball player. His decision making, as you would understand, isn't quite there yet. Sometimes he gives it away when he probably should play it a bit more simply, or not try and do what he's trying to do in terms of a pass or carrying with the ball. But I think it's just great in terms of when we're getting towards January, if that sort of idea for another centre back was on the horizon that they didn't quite get in the summer, whether it was Scales, when it was someone else. Perhaps they don't need to make that signing and can focus on other areas of the field. Yeah, which is something that's sort of a question mark over if a player is ever truly ready until you throw him in. You don't really know what they're going to be like in a senior environment. And I know Roland made a couple of appearances under Darryl Clarke and a couple of appearances in different cups last season for Rovers. And of course he played quite a few games for Swindon on loan. So I think he is a bit more experienced than maybe the other under-23, under-18 lads who've maybe knocked on the door a few times but not quite got their debuts. But hopefully it's signs of something to come for the other players who are maybe Luca Hall and
Lucas Tomlinson.
It's good. He's also, the way he's in the system, he's got experience on to his right, Mark Little, experience to his left for Tony Craig. It's a great little sort of shield he's got in terms of they're constantly talking to him, because ultimately he's giving one of them the ball in some way, or they're giving him the ball. So in terms of sort of positional, cultural kind of environment that he's been put in, that's it's worked out really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Liam Sercombe back with 2 assists and a goal against Shrewsbury. Can't really argue with that at all.
EFL team of the week.
EFL team of the week as well. Yeah, absolutely. Back to his best. Is he back, so to speak?
One swallow doesn't make a summer, but yeah.
Are you saying that because you've been critical in the past?
I have been critical in the past, and he hasn't hit the heights this season at all.
And he's deserved the criticism, I think, as well.
I think he has.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't argue with those kinds of stats: 2 assists and a goal.
He's got four assists in 8 games now, League One.
Yeah,
4 and 8 starts. Sorry, because I think it's 9 appearances.
And the goal he took was absolutely phenomenal as well. I'm super impressed, and he ran the game really against Shrewsbury. So yeah, if he can keep this up, I'm fully on his back. But it's going to be 2 or 3 games before I'm fully on the Sercombe train.
He's sort of always thrived off being in a front 3 under Darrell. That's where he was best, with Bowden on the right, him on the left, and then Matty Taylor or Ellis Harrison up front is where he sort of scored the bulk of his goals. We played that formation on Saturday against Shrewsbury with Adebayo, Clarke and him in a front 3. Do you see him as more of an attacking midfielder than a natural centre mid?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we can all agree his best attributes are his attacking, his shooting and his dribbling, and he can pick a pass. His tackling is absolutely rubbish. So I don't want to see him in the middle in a 2 because he can't play there. I don't want to see him out on the left wing where he's wasted. I want to see him advanced, either behind the striker or up along him.
The only thing he's good for from a wide the only thing he's good for. I don't mean that. Sorry, Liam. I don't mean that. I mean, what he is good when he is in a wide position is his delivery in terms of his crossing. That is good. The trouble is, often when he gets it wide, if he's too close to the touchline, you're having to hump it a bit further. Where that kind of where you're saying he's picking a pass, those kind of cute passes around the 18-yard box. He's able to do that when he's in a more central area. So yeah, he's definitely a playmaker, isn't he?
He played quite a bit at central attacking midfielder last season in the 4-4-2 Diamond, the last sort of 10 games of last season, and we spoke at length about how poor he looked in that 4-4-2 Diamond with the 2 strikers. But like I said, I allude to what I said about him under Darrell in a front 3, and here in a front 3, he's not fully out wide, but he's not dead central. He's sort of just slightly to an angle. Do you think that suits him more, slightly being at an angle where he can maybe shoot or cut outside and drill it across the box a bit more?
Yeah, I think what James said really, where he's not right out on the wing, a bit more central, but wide enough maybe in that half space. That's where he seems to thrive, definitely.
Yeah. And also he's got options, so he's got an overlapping wing back, so he's not the last point on the wing. He's got someone going around him. He's obviously got a central focal point in attack, whether that be Victor, whether it be JCH. He's got good passes behind him, with obviously Upson, Agogo use the ball sensibly. So he's got players around him he can give them who he can feed off as well. Where it's not just right, you're on the touchline, either beat the man or get it in the box. There's options
game
for
at
it.
all, is it?
No. I want to move on to this stat which I read yesterday. The most victories in 2019-20 from the top 4 tiers, all domestic competitions included. Exeter, Liverpool, Ipswich, Oxford and Peterborough all have 13 wins. And then on 12 wins is Leeds, Fleetwood, Portsmouth, Rotherham, Wickham, Forest Green and Bristol Rovers. So, pretty outstanding to have 12 wins in all competitions this season, the second highest out of all the teams. Well, joint highest, but you get what I'm saying. And then I also want to look at Graham Coughlin's record since he was appointed caretaker manager in mid-December. It's played 52, won 23, drawn 16, lost 13, with a win percentage of 44.2%. Coughlin sort of came out and said that people don't quite give him enough credit. And reading out those stats, I'm inclined to agree. Mets?
Yeah, I mean, we've been critical of him quite a lot, I have to say.
Maybe overly so.
I think it kind of leads on from the conversation that you and Nino had on the Q&A of if you take results over entertainment. I'm very much always on the entertainment side, because as much as I love winning football games, I don't want to watch a game like Bromley ever again in my life. But as we alluded to earlier, the change of shape that he's kind of he's gone for against Shrewsbury and the change of system, I think he is underrated, I think, by Rovers fans. I think a lot of people just say, well, yeah, he got the job off the caretaker thing, and he won a few games in that, but it's very kind of functional football. But actually, as he's shown against Shrewsbury, we can play quite attacking, quite nice football. And actually, the first game against Rochdale away, that was nice football. We had it down on the deck a lot. The second half was dross. But I think, given the situation he took over, with us being so bad, and a lot of the players he's got in the squad at the minute, who I'm sure he wants to move on, and the signings that he's made, which have been fantastic, and I think Tommy Widdrington deserves a lot of credit for that, because I'm going to slag him off massively later, so I'll get that in now. I think given a bit more time and a little bit more squad churn and get the players that he wants to in, I think we can actually start playing some better, nicer, more attractive football, and something that the crowd can get behind, because I know obviously atmosphere at the Mem's been pretty flat because the football's been pretty dire. So it's a virtuous cycle where we start playing a bit more exciting football, the crowd gets behind it a bit more, it becomes a bit more exciting, it kind of feeds itself at that point.
I mean, you can't really argue with 44% win percentage. That's pretty much half your games you're winning, and a lose percentage of only 13% is, that's champions form, really.
It's kind of fascinating, really, how players somehow replicate themselves as managers in terms of how he was as a player. This kind of fully committed. Like, you speak to anyone who's ever played with him, his former manager, they'll say he's a winner. That's all he's just. Graham Coughlin is a winner. That's what he does. And he's doing that as a manager. He's winning games of football. Now, the entertainment thing is it's an endless sort of battle that almost every manager. I mean, I think if you asked any football manager at any level, how would you like to play football? They'd all say, combination of Brazil 1970, Spain 2008, let's merge. They'd all like to do that, but you can only do really within your limitations and the various factors that are influencing that. And in kind of, I think I said it before when I was on it, Graham knew over the summer what was needed in terms of width, pace, needed a bit more creativity in there, and we'll see what happens in January, whether that comes in. So there was countless times he went on BBC, I think it was, and said, I'm trying to get attacking players, but attacking players are expensive, they're hard to come by, every other club wants these attacking players, so it's not easy. So it will be a gradual thing. Obviously the next 3 home games now coming up, Plymouth, Leyton Orient, Southend, without saying that immortal kind of, but they're all very winnable games, and games that I would imagine if I asked you to, you would be expecting to win all 3 of them. So it'll be interesting whether or not Shrewsbury and kind of the wow factor of that can be transferred into games where Rovers are the favourites. Not saying, because they went to Shrewsbury and I think it was very much, that's a tough game. That is a really tough game.
Yeah, Shrewsbury hadn't lost very much.
I think they were top scorers at home, and
some of the lowest conceders as well.
Yeah.
I think
I think that's what the stat was. So it'd be interesting how they're able to do that from the front. But I do think they're a team, they're evolving. He's only been in the job, I don't know, 10 months in football now, I guess, is a long time for a manager. But I think it's a case, he's working things out. They are becoming a bit more unpredictable in a good way. It's not so exactly what you're going to get. And the fact, which we haven't talked about, obviously, what was achieved on Saturday was done without their best individual player.
Absolutely, yeah. No Johnson and 4 goals it speaks volumes. And I think me and Nino slagged off Ollie Clarke and Sercombe at quite some. Well, Nino did, I didn't. Quite some length on the last episode at the Q&A, and then both of them go and score. So I'm surprised they didn't do the shush celebration and lift up their shirts and say "fuck GasCast" on it. Cool. We've
made it. If someone does that, we've absolutely.
We know we've rattled some players there if we've done that. we did a team talk for him. He probably just played the last GasCast on the team bus on the way up, and that's why we won 4-3. Cool. Let's move on to some more off the field matters. So, James, on Tuesday, the Bristol Post. Like I've dropped you in it. The Bristol Post released an article about Tommy Widdrington.
Yeah, I wrote it.
Yeah, you wrote it. Speaking about how he would quite like to potentially loan some under-23 players from Bristol City.
Maybe not just under-23 players.
Maybe not. But this certainly riled a few people up online.
Yeah. Just to say, for the process, I, very naively in many ways, I actually thought this is a really interesting area of debate. Maybe, this is one, innocently, I'm genuinely, I've seen accusations of sensationalist press and trying to create a shitstorm was, I believe, one accusation.
Anti-Rovers press.
Honestly, I genuinely thought, that is a really interesting thing. Ultimately, why not?
Yeah, James, I don't think that the outrage is directly at you. I think the outrage is more at what Tommy Widdrington has said. Rightly or wrongly, I think a lot of people are seeing this as a Rovers v City thing. As Mets, no doubt you're about to explode on the microphone any second.
You sound like he's going to drop some bars.
Yeah, fire in the booth.
Yeah, Mets, would you ever really be happy with us helping City develop their younger players?
No.
Well, hang on, but that question's framed
That's
wrongly.
very loaded.
That's what I mean. Help City
loaded.
develop players. That's a massively loaded question.
How are we seeing this then? How are we seeing this? So Rovers have come out and said, Widdrington has come out and said, City are a resource which are very close to us. They've got a very good academy, and we're looking to bring in as good players as we can to this club so that this club can kick on.
Well, he is looking to... Ultimately, you've got to look from his point of view. His brief is to get as many good footballers he can give to the manager and his coaches to improve that first team.
Yeah.
In the most efficiently financially efficient way.
So why would a partnership with Bristol City...
Why is it a partnership?
Because the way we framed it was they're a very close resource. We should look to use them. So... when you say that about a club, we haven't ever said that about Cardiff. We've never said that about Southampton. We've never said that about Bournemouth.
Yeah, no, that's
so. Why are we now saying this about Bristol City?
Because I think from you look at when clubs do. So basically, I mean, if you're looking at City as the example, sorry to say them, but if you're looking at it's going to come up in the comment. But if you're looking at City as an example, they're a very prolific loan club. In fact, I think they loan the most players out of any of the Championship club. They're very much, if you want to put it that way, a bit like Chelsea in a Championship sense. Okay, I know you're raising your eyes. I'm just framing it as an example, okay? So if you look at, you've got a club 5 miles away from you who loan a lot of players out and are looking to loan players out to league clubs, a lot of them very good players. So why shouldn't we get in on that action?
Because they're Bristol City and they can fuck right off. I think Widdrington is getting a lot of stick, and rightly. I think he should know better. He's from the northeast. He knows the rivalry, and he said himself to you in the piece. He said he knows about the rivalry between the clubs, and he knows he's going to get shot at for this, and rightly so.
Southampton as well.
Yeah, I mean, just fuck off, basically. And for even suggesting it, just no, I think it's naive. That being said, the rest of the article was really good.
Thank you.
Everything he spoke about was excellent, and the way that he's kind of built the scouting network from scratch at Rovers is absolutely amazing. And I think the job he's done is amazing. And for people to be calling for his head, which I've seen online, because of this,
outrageous.
I think is outrageous. Yeah, because look at the signings that he's...
It's stupid.
Yeah, it is absolutely stupid.
I think it's a reasonable test to someone's IQ. Probably.
Yes. No, I think it is. I think it's completely naive, really stupid, and it's people are going to be upset with him and hold grudges. That's the thing. Like, as a football fan, I love a grudge, and it's that thing. If you saw him at the ground, you'd be like, "Oh, that wanker wanted to get whoever Ziner on loan from City. He played against us at Plymouth away, and he was a wanker. I don't ever want to see him in a Rovers shirt because I wouldn't cheer him. I wouldn't ever. If we had a under-23 player in a Rovers shirt and he scored, I wouldn't be cheering. I'd wish we'd never scored.
But what if he scored again?
No.
And again?
No.
And
if
again?
he scored in a playoff final to take us up?
No.
Yes,
I'd rather stay there. No, I wouldn't.
You would if he went
No,
up.
I wouldn't. I would not. And we had this, I vaguely remember a discussion when we were looking at relegation and we said, what if we got a City wonder kid in that kept us up? I'd rather go down. I don't know why you're laughing. I really would.
I disagree with that. I think...
What is the line? Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, no,
no City players. That's where the line is. That's an easy rule.
I would not like any City players, but if a City player came in and they were outstanding, or they kept us up, or they took us up, then...
even worse if they took us up.
Why would that be bad?
Because all of them lot down the road would be like, oh, you only got promoted because of our kid. And they'd have that over us
and
all
we
the
would
time.
say, we went up using your player. How does that make you feel that you've given us
I don't think they'd give a
success?
shit.
Well, I don't know.
Because that player would be back at their club the next season. Honestly, it's just a. Oh God!
I get your point, and I'm massively against it. I would never have a City player on loan, not after Akinde and the other one who was a bit before my time, Williams, I think his name was. Yeah, just two bad success stories. It's never historically worked because you need to hit the ground running at such a pace.
That's the fundamental problem. And to be honest, speaking it from the Bristol City perspective, I would say they would be reticent to do that for that reason, because ultimately you drop a player in there, his first game's at the Mem, he's got to deliver some performance.
Straight away.
This is it. This is why it won't
He's
happen.
got to
Exactly. This is why it's not going to happen.
He's got to deliver.
I'm going to be on his back straight away.
Right. Okay. Right. Which you could say is counterproductive to your own team.
Oh, massively. I will cut off my nose to spite my face in this respect happily.
And yeah. But yeah, they've got and ultimately, if you're Bristol City, okay, so our options are he's going to Bristol Rovers, he's going to Coventry, or he's going to Doncaster. You're probably choosing the latter because that baggage then isn't going. Yeah. But the obvious benefits because the big thing when you loan young players out is that often when you send them away from your city, it's sometimes harder to monitor them. You know, some kind of loan managers and whatnot will say it can be the making of them and move away, but also it can be detrimental to their development. So having them down the road would actually be a good thing to some individuals. They classically never loaned out Lloyd Kelly, who's obviously now moved on to Bournemouth, because his character wasn't quite right for letting him going out away from his kind of like Bristolian roots or this kind of thing. So sorry, I'm getting into Bristol City chat. I didn't mean to do that. But yeah, I mean, there is because one sort of part of the argument it'd be like, why should we be developing Bristol City's players for them? But the thing is but they're being developed at clubs you're playing against.
Yeah.
So for you got Liam Walsh at Coventry, you got Joe Morrell at Lincoln, you got Max O'Leary up at Shrewsbury, someone else also in League One who obviously shall not be spoken. I don't think there's any chance him being.
Have we beaten all those teams?
Not Coventry.
Oh yeah, not Coventry.
So they're playing against Rovers. So why not have them playing for Rovers?
Fuck off.
Because they're City. They're City.
That's as best as I can put
it.
No,
I get it. I totally get it.
When we played Plymouth away and we got the 1-0 draw, and I'm sure it's
Zach Viner.
That's him.
Designer.
He was giving it like claps at the Rovers fans and giving us the wave and all that, and I was like, just fuck off.
Wouldn't you do that?
Oh, I would, yeah, as a Bristolian,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, amazingly so. But it just makes me kind of hate them and all their youth players even more.
It's definitely been something that's been considered beyond Tommy Widdrington saying it to me. Whether or not Bristol City would ever do it, I don't think, and whether or not the line would be crossed, because there's still a lot of animosity post Taylor, or because of that. And because of kind of the environment you drop in. But I find it an interesting debate, because we wouldn't be talking about it, I don't think, if it wasn't an interesting debate.
Yeah, it certainly raises emotions. I don't know about you, Max, but I'm pretty calm about these things.
I couldn't tell, mate.
But what if?
Oh God!
Dare I say
we just calmed him down? How are you going to get him riled up again?
Dare I say
it's great for podcasts.
Dare I say they become a Premier League club and their academy improves?
No.
Let's move on, shall we?
I think we should.
I think we should draw a line under that, as we both said.
Just to go on record, by the way, before I get grief, I completely get it. I completely get it. But I do think it's interesting.
You're a football fan.
Yes. No,
who's your team?
Well, I'm not able to say, am I?
Okay.
But I mean, it wouldn't take you long to find out. But
I'm just saying, if your team had a bigger rival, not saying they do, and they loaned them players, would you be happy with that?
Yeah.
Do you know what? When I was younger, I would have been very much no. But as you kind of age and mellow and kind of see the bigger picture and, dare I say, mature.
Wow.
Wow. Sorry, that was out of order. No, it's a difficult one. But no, I don't think I'd have a problem with it. And the thing is, from Tommy Widdrington's perspective, again, I come back to what his job is getting the most out of the resources at his disposal. Yeah. Black and white. He doesn't live in Bristol, and I know, yes, he should. Of course, he has an awareness of the rivalry. Of course, he does. But he's looking at it, and it's interesting as well because you talk about, when we were having the Steve Hamer conversation earlier about being modern, business-like. That's what he's doing. Yeah. He's looking at the X's and O's. He's looking at the black and white of it. There's some really good footballers down the road that perhaps, if I start building bridges, could play half a season for Bristol Rovers and improve them by 6 to 9 points. Why shouldn't I explore that avenue?
I get it, but it won't work. I don't think it'll work.
Quite clearly it won't work because literally everybody has said this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's being polite.
Yeah. We're going to talk about the Plymouth game on Sunday, FA Cup second round. Metz, you spoke with Plymouth Life this week and previewed the game. If you've not checked that out, please do give it a listen. Metz, you quite enjoyed that chat, didn't you?
Yeah, it was good. It's going to be an interesting one. Argyle are bringing a lot, as they usually do, away. We haven't opened all of the ground yet. I think the West Terrace is still closed, but if we get enough sales between now and then, it should be open, and it should be a good atmosphere. It's always a good atmosphere when it's local-ish, bit of rivalry, bit of spice. It's a shame that Derek Adams has gone because, you know, everyone loves giving an opposing manager a bit of shit, and there's a bit of history there. But it should be a really good game. They're on a bit of form, and it'll be an interesting one from our perspective because it's one of those is, you know, we are the favourites. We're playing against the League Two team, but they are, I think, I rate them quite highly to get promoted next season. So I think
they're good enough to give us a game.
Yeah. So it should be a really good game, and yeah, like I said, bit of local rivalry, bit of spice, hopefully.
Yeah. So formation-wise, would you stick with what we played at Shrewsbury, or would you go back to the tried and tested 5-3-2, which we played against Bromley to sort of grind out the result in the cup?
Not the Bromley. Speaking to Adam from Argyle Life, he was saying that they're quite vulnerable to the press, so that could be a really good, successful kind of way to play. The big question for me is if Tom Davies is fit, does he come back in for Rolling? If he is fit, what would you put him straight back in?
It's a big question. It's a dilemma, and it's a nice dilemma to have. But personally, no, I wouldn't rush Davies back. I think Rollins more than good enough to fill in until Tom's 100%, and then I think because it's a cup game, let's give Rollins some more minutes because we don't know when he's going to get his next chance in the first team. And maybe give it a few games, and then when it gets back to the league Southend game, I'd probably still play Rollin. And then when we play Sunderland, I think it is after that maybe. It might be an away game. Peterborough, I think it is actually. Yeah, I'd bring Davies back in maybe for the Peterborough game if he's fit.
And there's still Johnson, which I presume he'll play against Argyle.
Yeah.
And if he does play, then do you drop Victor?
Yes.
But Victor played very well in that new system, so it's difficult.
Johnson is a massive upgrade on Victor as far as I'm concerned. His hold-up play is much better. His goal threat is undeniable.
Are you of the opinion they can't play together?
They could play together, but the system that kind of worked against Shrewsbury with the one and then Sercombe and Ollie Clarke pushing on, there's not room for two strikers in there, so I'm quite happy with John O up on top on his own.
Yeah. If we do get through, we'll go through to the third round. Who would everyone's dream tie be?
City, obviously. Just obviously.
From a journalistic point of view, without question, Bristol City. I mean, would it be fantastic? That's probably not the right word, but it would be
tasty.
It would just be really interesting, wouldn't it? I know there are people at that club who would want Rovers as well, I think.
Yeah,
because I think it would just be, hopefully, I'm sure there will be not an element of nastiness. There'll be a lot of nastiness, but I think from a Bristol point of view, I think, you know, if that tie comes out, it's more than likely going to be on TV. It gets the national spotlight on Bristol, which doesn't happen often, not often enough anyway. So I think from that perspective, absolutely.
And Rovers have got absolutely nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be all for it. 100%. I think we're all in agreement there. If not City, then obviously a nice top 6 Premier League club away from home. Maybe Spurs in that brand new stadium.
I want to see this 10,000 pints a minute that they can pour. I want to get a half-time pint like immediately after the whistle and actually have time not to have to neck it immediately because I've been served at 2 minutes to kick off for the second half.
Just going back to City, obviously it'll be interesting because you wouldn't want too many of their players, young players, playing because then they'd be cup tied. Should you get through and you loan them?
What have I just said? We've drawn a line with this, James. I'm not going back to this. We've taken up about 20 minutes in the pod talking about
You
this.
wouldn't want that, would you?
No, not if you become dependent on them.
I'd want them to recall Matty Taylor to play in that game.
Oh, yes.
So that Alfie Kilgore or Tony Craig, either of them can end his career. That'd be absolutely amazing.
Oh, mate. You got me hyped up for it now, and we're definitely going to get Peterborough away instead. So it's, or just lose to Plymouth straight up, and then Plymouth get City. So yeah, not the best. Predictions then. How do you think we're going to do against Plymouth? Are we going to get through?
I went for 2-1 on the scout report, so I'm going to stick with that.
I think it's going to go to a replay. I think it'll be 1-1.
I love Plymouth away as well.
I mean that's a safe bet, I think. Yeah, I think Rovers are a funny team when they're playing with pressure, really, aren't they? There does seem, obviously, there is. It came up last season, didn't it? And Graham talked about it at the time, and he got quite widely derided for it. Ian Holloway said he was right in what he said about this kind of mental block at home, and I think mental block was maybe the wrong choice of phrase, but certainly there's this kind of weight of pressure, and I think because they're playing a League Two team. Maybe, I don't know, because a Sunday is some reasons a different day to play football, so there's a different feeling around the ground. I do think there's an expectation there, so it'll be interesting in how they deal with that, because obviously the Bromley game, they needed to score early, really. I know they scored first, but it's such a weird game that was, such a weird game. So I think if they can score first, they'll be able to sort of control it out, so to speak. But cliches as it is, the longer it goes on as a draw, that pressure builds. But I still think they've got enough kind of solidity, organisation, all those kind of boring words. Sorry to go back to type. And if Clarke Harris comes back in, as it stands, because interestingly, actually, Graham didn't do press this week. I think because of the Plymouth connections, and ultimately he just gets peppered with questions about Plymouth, and then it becomes about him and Plymouth. It doesn't become about Bristol Rovers. So he kind of he dodged it, so to speak. And Kevin Mayer was put up and basically told us absolutely nothing about injuries. So as to what Johnson's health is and Tom Davis, I'm not really sure. I think he'll probably play. Having missed Shrewsbury. It was sorry, just to go back actually on a point. I was really surprised he played against Bromley in the FA Cup. And just to say, Graham Coughlin absolutely played me in a press conference, because he literally said, looked me in the eye, and said, anyone who's been carrying an injury, the medical team have told me they will not play on that pitch. And then 24 hours later, Johnson Clarke Harris is in the team.
He's starting and plays.
He plays,
and
then obviously misses the Shrewsbury game. Now, it's a calculated gamble, £36,000 into the next round, blah, 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 all this. So it'll be interesting if Johnson's, or he's eternally 80% fit, but if he's around that, will he take the gamble and then think, Leyton Orient, Southend, maybe you can sit those ones out? Which one is the most important of those three fixtures?
Probably the FA Cup, I would say.
Probably the FA Cup.
Yeah, probably
the FA Cup. Yeah. So, yeah, Rovers win. Sorry to go back to the original chat. It was a prediction. So I think Rovers win, maybe 2-1.
Let's move on to the player spotlight for this week. Thanks for voting on Twitter and Facebook for who you think we should discuss. The winner was Tony Craig, so we're going to talk about Millwall Tone. He was great last season. This season, he seems to be even better, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, he's just doing what Tone does, doesn't he? He's no nonsense, like head it and kick it centre back. dirty, horrible git. I realise I've sworn a lot, so I'm not going to use the word I really want to use. And pops up with a goal or two a season. He's just a leader, isn't he? He is a leader, and I love how he gives any official a bollocking if they don't give us a decision. I just all round love the bloke. I think he's a fantastic addition, probably one of the best signings that Darrell's ever made.
Fantastic, yeah, no, I don't disagree. He's been superb, and he doesn't look like a 33-year-old centre-back, does he? He's playing like he's 25, and he certainly isn't. He doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. It's full steam ahead as far as he's concerned. Sort of brings me on to my next question. How many more years do you think we can get out of him? Because he just looks so full of life.
Well, we've always said, since when we signed him, we always said, how much can we get out of him? Are we getting the last year of him? Should we be looking to make him a player coach? And we've been saying that for 2-3 years now. And I think as long as he's happy, because he's never had amazing pace, so that's no real detriment. His reading of the game is really good. His organisation is fantastic, and organising those around him as well. I think as long as he's happy to go on, I think he'll call time on his career before we want to say to him, time.
Yeah, I think he's out of contract next summer, so that'll be a discussion to be had. I would imagine if things stay as they are, that Graham would look to retain him in some way. I think his kind of role in a way has been magnified because of Alfie's come along, and ESE as well. Just that kind of leadership, calming. It was interesting he didn't get the captaincy. I thought it was interesting. I know why Ollie got it for the local connections and stuff like that, but it was interesting he didn't, because in many ways he is the obvious candidate to lead the team. But you've got that authority. He's got the younger legs around him as well, so he doesn't have to worry about that too much. So yeah, and I think his durability is just remarkable. I mean, we're looking at now, most minutes this season in League One, 1,400 minutes. He had the most minutes in League One for Rovers. Sorry, League One, that's for Rovers. Just astonishing for someone, sorry, who's younger than me, of his age. But yeah, it's just fantastic testament to him, and kind of what he's doing in terms of prolonging his career. And getting the best out of his attributes. In ultimately, he's still League One football. He's still playing, League One football at a really high level, and the amount of games he's playing is very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a different style of player who obviously probably moves around a lot more, but Chris Lyne's younger than Tony Craig when he sort of called it a day for us or was sort of let go, but he couldn't hack 50 games a season. He was probably limited to about 30 odd. Like you say, Tony Craig's playing every single match at a high standard, at a high level, and bringing out 7 or 8 out of 10 performances every week. And it just begs the question: he's not deteriorating at all, so why not? Keep giving him a 1 year rolling contract.
There is a slight, because we're talking about it now, obviously end of November. You do wonder when it gets to March, April, is this going to start to show? So maybe he does, and obviously he's probably effing and blinding if he's listening to this. But you do start to think, well, maybe his minutes need to be managed a little bit more, because when it comes to, let's hope the season, there's still something in the season. Just going back to what you said last week, Max.
I have to apologise for this, don't I?
Well, that was my little tee up for you, though.
Oh, okay. I've been told on Twitter by Aaron Kemp that I need to publicly apologise for saying that this is a quote-unquote dead season. It isn't a dead season. We're 3 points off the playoffs. I want to apologise to the Rovers squad and to the Rovers fans for stating that it was indeed a dead season, much to play for still, and I was dead wrong.
So assuming you're not tweeting it's a dead season in March, April, and they're still having to play for something, whether that be playoffs, whether that be EFL Trophy, whether it be FA Cup, there's still games to be won for a purpose. Tony Craig is very much going to be a huge part of that, on the pitch, in the dressing room. And you want him to be at the absolute maximum level of his fitness. You do hope these kind of the miles he's going through now don't have that impact later on down the line. Yeah, no, that's a very good point, and it's hard to say now where he will be in 5-6 months' time. But you can only judge it on last season, where he seemed to just have no problems churning out those minutes. No, absolutely. But even if he does, we seem to have Menezes in the squad now. Sort of brings me to my next question, which is how integral do we think he is in this back three? For example, if we say in the next game, if we swapped Craig and put Davies back in,
at the centre of that back three, how much would an effect would that have? Organisationally, would be as strong? Would it work? Or
I don't think we'd be as strong. I think it would work because Tom Davies is an experienced League One centre-back, and he's very good at what he does. But I think Tony does the real organising there, and he is the leader of that defence. And if you swap out Tony, you're leaving Menezes and Alfie, who are a little less experienced. So I think he is the glue of that back three, and I think the others are probably interchangeable. But I think Tony has to be there for that solidity, that leadership.
I think at the start of the season that would have been tough because obviously Tom Davies was very new to the club, very new to the players, new to the manager. He obviously very quickly adapted and became potentially Rovers' best individual for a time. He certainly wasn't he? Best individual player.
Doubt, yeah.
So I think him coming back in, and if that situation did arise, it wouldn't be as impactful as it would have been, say, 2 months ago. And he could be that organiser, that leader. But yeah, I think there'll be doubt there, definitely. But I'm just looking at some stats there, and Tom Davies is better in the air in terms of his overall success rate. So I don't think you're losing anything there in terms of having him as the centre part. And he's good on the ball. I mean, Davies is probably better on the ball than Tony Craig as well.
Absolutely.
So long term, that's probably the three.
Yeah, that's something I think we'll all be keen to see, was how well that Davies with Menezes and Kilgore either side of him would pan out. Tony being the reliable glue that holds the team together. It's the linchpin test, isn't it? Once you remove him, is it all going to fall apart, or is his legacy of being that commanding centre of that back three going to sort of hold firm? I guess time will tell, and we'll find out. Let's sort of go back to what you were saying, Metz, about we always talk about him in a coaching role. Would you like to see him stay on as a coach?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
we can't keep every player who we like as a coach all the time.
I mean, we did it with Mance, so I'm having it.
We did it with Mance. We did it with Mildy. We didn't do it with McChrystal. But
no, well, he carried on. He's still not finished playing. He's still at Crusaders. So when he's finished there, he can come back as well. Sinks can come back when he's done with Millwall, with Walsall. Millwall, yeah. James Clarke can come back as well. He's another one. I want the old gang back together as coaches. I think Tony, with his experience, and he has played at Championship level, I think he can be an asset in a coaching role. I'd love to see it, but I think that's probably more sentimentality from myself. With all the other players I want as coaches as well.
I mean, if it hypotheticals, if it did get to the end of the season, his contract's up for one reason or another, and obviously players left last season who were offered contracts, so potentially that could happen again if he's offered a contract. He will be looking for another club. I would think. I think he almost has to stay at Rovers to then become a coach rather than leave and come back, Whereas someone like Sinclair, for example, because that natural tie is there. But for someone like Craig, he'd have to retire here, really, wouldn't he? Before that became a prospect.
Yeah, he would. Okay, that's about it for this week, Gasheads. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please do give it a like or share or recommend it to a friend. It would help us out massively. Until next time, all we've got left to say is up the gas.
Up the gas.
Up the football.
Got to be impartial.